Good morning. This is Rich Nelson with Allendale with our special update for today's USDA report. This is April 9th of 2015. As you know, every month USDA updates its supply and demand and therefore ending stock estimates for the various grain products, and also to have some discussions regarding livestock numbers as well. Now, getting to the heart of the matter, the trade had expected an increase from last month for corn ending stocks. That's, of course, due to that quarterly grain stocks report we had last month, which found more corn on hand than expected here. So the trade did know that corn stocks were going to be increasing. They raised them from last month's 1.777 billion bushel ending stock estimate now to 1.827. That was actually under the trade's expectation of 1.854. So USDA did go ahead and lowered feed and residual by about 50 million bushels. They made no changes, though, to any other categories. So we've got some questions here. So number one, this feed residual change probably a bit smaller than the trade expected. We were looking more for like a 150 million bushel change. So perhaps USDA has some further reductions on feed residual in future reports. On the other hand, though, let's also point out that ethanol numbers they left unchanged at 5.2 billion bushels. Despite our very strong ethanol pace, the trade has these feelings perhaps that USDA will have to make some further increases for ethanol in the future reports. So corn 1.827 on the domestic side. Now over on world side, also point out USDA probably disappointed some bulls here as well. The general feeling going into this report was that USDA would be lowering Brazil's corn crop and increasing Argentina's corn crop. USDA actually left the Brazil numbers unchanged at 75 million tons. As far as the Argentina, they increased that from 23.5 to now 24.0 million tons. So that might be considered a little disappointing here by some bulls here. Over on the soybean side of things here, USDA did make some changes here. The trade did expect them to lower ending stocks on this report due to that grain stocks report we had, the quarterly one, last month. The trade expectation was that ending stocks would drop from 385 million bushels last month to now 370. And that's actually exactly what USDA did here today. So 370 million bushels is our current estimate here for old crop ending stocks. Now, the way USDA made their numbers here is actually something of interest. And they added about 5 million bushels to imports. They also added about 6 million bushels to seed, and they added about 14 million bushels to their number for what we call residual use, which is simply a category USDA has no numbers to actually count from. What was interesting here is they left their crush and export numbers unchanged. So at this point, maybe we're going to see some changes on this end in our feeling here towards the bearish end in future reports. One thing we have some concerns about is that USDA's current crush pace is a bit too high compared with what would be more reasonable to assume given these lowered crush margins that have now been seen here in the past few weeks. And in terms of world numbers here, same story as corn to speak of here. USDA actually left their Brazil soybean production estimate unchanged at 94.5 million tons. People were expecting a decline for that category. Now, as far as Argentina, they actually added a full 1 million tons to their increase, going from 56 to now 57 million tons for Argentina's Brazil soybean production. Over on the wheat side of things here, USDA did go ahead and lower ending stocks from 691 to now 684. The way they did this kind of fit into what many people would say would be pretty much be clear with assumptions. Imports dropped by about 15 million tons. We did see a 2 million increase for seed and a 10 million increase for the other category as far as the other domestic category there. Keep in mind, as far as export numbers, they also lowered those by about 20. So wheat ending stocks going from 691 to 684. And the average trade guess was actually maybe 692. So maybe a little supportive on the wheat numbers here than the trade expectations. In terms of world numbers, as far as wheat goes, no major changes to speak of here as far as world production numbers. A moderate increase here for the European Union wheat crop. And as far as North Africa, a very minor increase there as well. Wheat ending stocks, though, on the world side actually declined just a little bit there. Nothing's going to get the trade's attention here. Now, normally we actually don't mention any livestock numbers in this report on these type of updates here, but on this one we do have to mention the the numbers USDA made there as far as changes. Now, coming off that hogs and pigs report from March, USDA was expected to increase pork production numbers. Actually increased them, but maybe not as much as expected. About 120 million pounds on this one. What will get the trades attention was their numbers as far as imports. USDA added a full 220 million pounds to the import estimate here, based on the idea that we have some very problematic, I should say, currency issues here, U.S. dollar value changes. So as a whole, we had both production as well as imports raised, no change in exports. So the U.S. consumer now has a full 340 million pounds of extra pork on their plate left to eat here this year. One thing of interest on the beef side here, USDA did raise production by 150 million bushels. They raised imports by 50 million bushels, and they only raised exports by a small 20 million bushels. So the U.S. consumer now has an extra 105 million pounds of extra beef on their plate to consume here. Now, we can't ignore chicken here as far as chicken production. Left unchanged versus last month's numbers there. What USDA did, though, was they made changes for exports. Given our bird flu problem, USDA lowered their estimate for exports by a full 420 million pounds. That's pretty much left right on the U.S. consumer's plate now to eat. So totaling the numbers up, we've got an extra 105 million pounds on the U.S. consumer's plate for beef, an extra 340 million pounds on the U.S. consumer's plate for pork, and an extra 420 left on the chicken numbers. So some concerns as far as the total meat tonnage and meat left for the U.S. consumer to eat here. If you have any questions about this report, markets, or marketing in general, feel free to give Allendale a call here, 1-800-262-7538.